Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining. I know we'll have a few other people join us here mid-meeting, but that is all right. We'll go ahead and call this special session of the Auburn City Council and our Auburn Economic Recovery Workshop to order. I will ask the city clerk, since this is a special session of the council, to take the roll, please.
Councilmember Dowden Calvillo.
Present.
I don't see Councilmember Amara here. Councilmember Mackey.
Present.
Spokley.
Here.
And Mayor Berlant.
I am here. Great. Thank you very much. First item here, we'll take public comment. This is the time provided for the public to speak to the council on an item that is on the agenda. Of course, we are taking public comment via email and telephone ahead of the meeting. Are there any public comments related to today's agenda items?
There's no public comment.
Okay, well, hearing that, we'll go ahead and jump right in then to our workshop. So I feel like we're just kind of a repeated record here because every week is like a whole new week with different changes. Start off with our health and emergency response update. Just got off the phone, the computer, with our county leaders, including our health officer, and a couple updates just wanted to give to the group. We're currently sitting at 199 cases, positive cases within Placer County. 5 more have tested positive today, so that will move us over the 200 mark for the county. 3 people, though, are in the ICU, and if you go to their dashboard, which we talked about last week, you can see majority of the positive cases have already recovered. However, this week alone, there's been an 8% increase over last week. So health officer talked a lot about the fact that the virus is still here. These are still positive numbers, if you will, but they're still watching very closely and still urging us all to take precautions, 6-foot distance, washing our hands, staying at home, all the other recommendations that they've been giving. As again, it's clear the virus is still here in Placer County. Something I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of, starting June 8th, the county is moving the South Placer testing location from the Roseville grounds, the fairgrounds there in Roseville, to the Placer County Library in the city of Rockland. That location will continue to be free and still encouraging all residents, not just those that have symptoms, to get tested and to ensure that we have a good sample of those that are negative within our county. Another little tidbit of information that I learned is Placer County has received several dozen doses of a new drug that has provided to be positive treatment for patients in the ICU. So the county does have a stock of that drug for those that are ill. And so a lot of good at least treatments being made available to our county. Talking about reopenings this week, obviously this group knows, but places of worship, protests, as well as hair salons and barbershops were all provided guidance this week to allow for a safe reopening. They are expecting new guidelines related to schools, childcare, and day camps within the coming week. And here's kind of the funny part that's not funny, is they're actually expecting 2 guidance documents, one from Public Health and one from the Department of Education. And so those 2 marry up, and how they coincide and which one overrides the other will be something we'll have to work through in the future. But I think it specifically affects childcare and day camps for right now, as most schools have moved or are close to moving into summer session. A lot of discussion about the 4th of July. I specifically brought it up, knowing that the chamber this week had to cancel the 4th of July fireworks event for a number of reasons, and Allison can report on those in a little bit. But I really urged the county health officer to confirm what's the guidance. We were a little over a month away, and she reiterated that the state restrictions still restrict gatherings outside immediate households. So unless you are a family member, you're really still not allowed to gather together. And so coming together for a pancake breakfast, a parade, or any other type of community event is still restricted. So what I really urged the health officer was to really push back on asking for some common sense guidance. just because I fear that many are going to take a holiday that is all centered around freedoms and may choose to still celebrate despite the recommendations. And so I at least voice that we need some level of common sense guidance and common sense level of restrictions over just telling people to stay at home, because I worry that that's not going to be enough. And she very much agreed. The health officer confirmed that she had sent a letter to the health department and would be continuing discussions about what she kept calling common sense restrictions. And her example, which made perfect sense to me, was if we're now allowing places of worship and protest to be limited at 100, why can't we limit other types of community events if they're taking those same precautions? So back to some of those common sense guidance items. So more to come. I will let you know, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. But between Bob, the chamber, and the hook and ladder, the Auburn Fire Hook and Ladder, this morning, some preliminary discussions on what we can do 4th of July. So we can talk about that here later in our agenda when we get to some of the holiday weekend discussions. And then one last, well, I'll hold this item till later. So that's just a quick update on where we are with the health officer and the state of the health within our community. Did anybody have any questions from that they'd like to discuss or mention?
Daniel, I saw from ARD an announcement that they're opening up their daycare camps. Are they out ahead of the curve here or ahead of the rulings? What's happening there? Do you know?
Great question. If I don't know, do you know if the announcement said when they would open them? Because it was made clear that day camps are not allowed at this very moment, but that they are expecting guidance. And so, they may very well coincide with the guidance coming out at the same time we would be moving to open them. But at this point, I think it's only childcare specifically related to essential workers that are allowed at the moment.
I'll look it up. I thought it seemed like when I read it, it said they are now open, but I could have misread that.
Yeah, good question. Any other questions for me before we move on?
I
Okay,
think
then
on
we'll
the,
go- Yeah,
I
go
was
ahead.
just going to say on the ARD Discovery Summer Camp, and they announced June 1st they'd be open.
That's Monday.
So my assumption is, yes, they are going out on their own, but I would also, as those of you who remember at the Meddlers meeting on Monday morning, we talked about the fact that barbershops and hair salons were still closed, and by Monday afternoon, they were reopened. So let's just hope that ARD is taking guidance and going to be paying attention to following the restrictions that come if it gets released. Again, if it was made very clear that some of this is speculation of what they're expecting to see, but nothing said. And I'll just mention on this item, I really stressed heavily with the health officer and our county health director that we really need to give businesses more time than we're getting. As grateful as we are that hair salons and barbershops were given the green light to open, unless they were prepared ahead of time with supplies and other things, it takes time to turn around. And that's acknowledged by the economic director and the health officer as well. So at this point, they will continue to advocate to get as much leeway and lead time, I should say, before these are occurring. But as I'm learning, we here are learning things just as quickly as they are. And that's just an unfortunate part of the organization of this pandemic. So.
Daniel, I don't want to belabor this, but I do recall hearing from the governor's office some discussion about day camps, summer day camps, and that they were allowed under specific circumstances and under specific guidance. So it was very similar to that of the childcare that's for essential workers. So I know that they have to follow, there's groups of no more than 10 and you can't have different teachers and so forth. So I remember hearing that. So that's probably what ARD is. I'm hoping they're following that, but I do remember that discussion.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. And let's hope you're right.
Yeah.
And Councilwoman Mackey.
I don't know if anybody else has heard this, or there's been some confusion with manicurists who operate in hair salons. Hair salons are open, so they assumed that they could be open. They could work as well because they work in a hair salon. They don't just have they're not all manicurists don't just have their own salon. So a lot of hair salons have manicurists. So I have the impression that manicurists are not given the permission to operate yet, even if they are in a hair salon. And that's the direction I've been giving anybody that asks me. Is that how you feel about it as well? Or does anybody else have that impression that they can work if they're in a hair salon?
So we did specifically talk about nail salons, massage parlors, and tourism, fitness centers still remaining closed. My understanding from reading the guidelines that were released related to hair salons, and I'll try to pull it up as we're talking here, it's not just the salon that was allowed to reopen, it's specific actions that are often occurring in these salons and barbershops,
Right.
including coloring and cutting hair. So my understanding, and maybe someone else in the group has it or knows better, but my understanding is those actions would still be restricted under the state's order.
Well, I read those guidelines as well. It's not clear because it's like if you shave somebody's face or you tweeze somebody's eyebrows, it never said anything about doing anybody's nails in those guidelines. So that was a little confusing, but I said out of the abundance of caution, you should be careful until you get, you can ask the health officer yourself if you'd like.
And
to
the governor's been very clear in his daily, when he gives his statements, on a daily basis, that nail salons are not included in that. I thought I saw something in the guidelines that talked about specifically that nail services were not included, in addition to any services that would not allow both parties to wear a mask, like facials and the eyebrows and eyelashes and things of that nature. But I thought the guidelines also specifically excluded nails, but I do remember hearing, because I'm waiting for that. I want them to open. I'm desperate. But he was very clear that nail salons were not, we weren't ready yet.
And that's what you keep saying, nail salons, but it's not.
Nail technicians,
Yeah,
nail services.
There's one nail technician in this hair salon, and she kept saying to me, I can wear a mask. My customers can wear a mask and we can be safe. And I said, I don't think you can work. Yeah. I really don't.
I think it's any nail services, not nail salons, but nail services.
I agree.
I'm hoping, I'm waiting.
Right.
Anybody else have any answer to that, Rob?
I just have a different question. And I just, you mentioned that there's been a few more incidents. I looked at the chart and I think we've had 14 in the last 4 days, which is probably our biggest chunk in a few weeks. Is Dr. Sisson, we're not in danger, are we, of backsliding or I just saw that Lassen County just went from open to shut again, and just curious if you talked about those protocols at all.
Yes, we didn't get into specific metrics. Lassen and Imperial are two counties that have had outbreaks and are taking steps backwards. And she mentioned that there's a lot of focus and a lot of additional guidance from the state on monitoring metrics to make that determination. There was no feeling that I picked up that we were necessarily in that boat or in jeopardy of going backwards, but I think that's where her guidance to us was to really continue to do our best to follow the proper precautions. She did state that today the state would be really focused more on moving into the future and continuing to look at how we and if we have to pull back and what that could mean on a local level or a statewide level. But nothing specific as far as the metrics that were included in the attestation. If you remember, when the county got approval to have the local variants, metrics were used, and they're in the document. A certain number of new cases, certain number of new deaths, et cetera. And it's not just one of those; it has to be kind of a multitude of those. So I didn't get a real specific answer, but just that they're watching that very closely to make sure that we avoid that.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this update? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item on here, which is city actions and services. So I'll let Bob lead this conversation of anything new going on within the city. I know we'll talk here in a moment about the expanded outdoor dining, but anything new from the city as far as the response?
Well, it's kind of interesting. Memorial Weekend looked like it was a huge success in town. A lot of visitors came in, a lot of locals came out. As you know, we had started for that weekend outdoor dining and entertainment in Old Town. Looked like people really enjoyed it. We had people sitting outdoors throughout the entire 3-day weekend. We did a number of adjustments, both for seating and accommodating the numbers of folks we had. We also added additional musicians throughout the 3 days. So it was very nice. It was very well structured and organized, great communications between the business association, the businesses, and myself. So we tag teamed the work throughout the 3 days, worked very, very nicely. Also was pulled aside by several retailers this week who said they also had a good weekend, which was very nice. We didn't know if we would see that or not, but I think at least some of the retailers that cater more to the tourist seem to do quite well. So good for them, good for them. I have not done any type of a comprehensive overview for the retailers for the weekend, but just from anecdotal evidence, it sounded like a good weekend.
Any questions for Bob on city actions? Well, Bob, you already kind of hit on this, but do you have anything else additional on expanded outdoor dining and some of the discussions you're having specifically with downtown?
Yeah, downtown has now jumped in completely. They have acquired 22 top tables, chairs, and umbrellas. They have worked out a permit with us, a special event permit. So those tables, they're being set up now, and I think I'll be giving them a call after our meeting here because of the weather event that will be coming through tomorrow. I certainly don't think we want to have umbrellas up and around. But they are going to start with a smaller number of tables and then start to expand out over the next several days. They will also be doing live music under the same criteria as downtown or as Old Town. And we will be opening public restrooms starting today as well to help to accommodate all the additional activity that's going on. So we will be working with downtown this weekend as well as Old Town, making sure things go smoothly and successfully for all of them.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Bob related to expanded outdoor dining? Marjorie, go ahead, but you're on mute.
Moving no sound. Bob, 2 things for Open in Auburn on Facebook. Can you send me the information on when and where the tables will be set up and I'll share that?
Yeah.
Sure. I don't know. I know where they're ultimately all going to be. I don't know the staging, the sequencing. I will get it to you though. And great to have that out there.
Yeah, as you find out. And then if you hear of any businesses that need help, a little extra, free marketing, if you'll also send me the names, I will, if they don't do their own, I'll create some and put it also on the Open in Auburn and Chit Chat and all those other pages.
That's terrific. And let me try to come up with a list for you because I think there's a number out there that are open and don't have the greatest online presence.
Mhm.
I think they would really appreciate having the assistance there.
Yeah, just let me know and I'll come up with some stuff.
Great.
Any additional questions on this item? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to business personal protective equipment needs. I'll let Allison kick it off, and Bob, if you have anything as well you want to hit, great. But I know the chamber has been leading some efforts and some discussions on this, so Allison, I will turn it to you.
Perfect, thanks. Yeah, I just actually met with the county and Cal OES today at noon to talk a little bit more about this, and we put in an order for some disposable masks and gallon jugs of hand sanitizer. We kind of assessed our need. It came to us very, very quickly from the county. I think Wednesday we were informed that we had the possibility of ordering this from the state. And so we put together a real quick, what we were calling a quick and dirty survey, just to kind of ask some of our local businesses where we could get in touch with what their needs were so we could make an assessment. And then we used that assessment and kind of figured out how many businesses really might also benefit from this and made an order based on that. So it looked like the average number of face masks that businesses thought they might need. And this is just intended to be a stopgap measure. So in this order for businesses that can't get masks quick enough, and it's intended to be a way for them to be able to open, and while they're waiting for their supplies to come, to allow them to serve their customers and keep their employees safe. So we averaged, based on our survey, approximately 100 masks per business and 2 gallons of hand sanitizer per business. So based on that, and then the number of businesses that we have and what we estimated would be appropriate, we ordered 35,000 disposable masks and 700 gallons of hand sanitizer. We're still working out the logistics, but it looks like it should be able to be delivered early next week to City Hall. And once I find out when that delivery can be made, I will work with Bob in making sure that we can accept the delivery. And then we have an online form for businesses to qualify that they meet the qualifications for these supplies, and we will work at getting them out to them as they need them, and they are free of charge to all of the businesses that need them.
Allison, are they free of charge to the chamber too? Is that where they threw a grant,
Yes.
correct, through the FEMA grant?
Yeah, I
To the
don't
state?
actually know how the state's procuring them, but the state is giving us to the county and the cities free of charge.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding, talking to the county today, it's through the federal dollars that are coming to the state, able to procure the
Yeah, that FEMA. Yeah.
issuing out to the counties and then issuing out. And one thing I would just add to Allison's report that I was given earlier today is the goal of this program is really to prepare businesses to allow them to reopen, give them a 2-week supply, and then allow them to continue to try to procure their own safety equipment. But we don't want safety equipment to be the barrier to keep closed. And so that's what all this effort is. So Allison, thank you very much for all your efforts to get us equipment for our businesses that need it.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Any comments? Yes, Councilwoman Mackey.
I just wanted to ask Allison, what are the qualifications required for a business to get these?
So they must be a business that's allowed to be open currently. So essential stage 2 or 2+ is what we're qualifying them as. And as that changes, then that would qualify them for some of these supplies, which is why we kind of ordered up, anticipating that more businesses will be able to open in the coming weeks. And then they must qualify that they are self-certify that they have attempted to get these supplies and they cannot get them immediately. And there is a wait time associated with them getting these supplies. And so they need them now. And then again, this is their stopgap measure to be able to use them and have something so that they can conduct business until they can get the supplies on their own.
Okay, so given the number of people that ran to Costco and Walmart and got all the toilet paper, how do you certify that they're actually a business? Do you ask them for their business license?
What we're going to ask them for, what the county and the state are recommending, is we have a form that all of the cities are planning on using in Placer County. It's going to ask them for their business name and their business EIN. And then of course, their business address, telephone number, and contact person. They'll have to submit that information before they will get a time slot in which they can come and pick up the supplies that they are requesting.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Allison.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions for Allison? Bob, was there anything from your perspective? I know you've been having some of those conversations as well. Anything to add?
Allison is taking the lead. We're just there to support her, and what she asks for, we'll do our best to provide.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you,
And a little bit of
Allison.
good news. It was
Yeah.
reported to us that they thought the supplies would be here as early as Monday. So
Mhm.
hopefully that
Yeah.
happens.
Fingers
Council-
crossed. We put in the order today, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Dowden Calvio.
I just want to say thank you, Allison, for taking the lead on that. I really appreciate that on behalf of our businesses, and really happy to see that you're on top of that. So thank you so very much.
Yeah, no problem.
Ditto.
Ditto.
We'll go ahead then and move on to our next item. Memorial Day weekend increased visitor impact. Bob, you had kind of briefly mentioned some of the overall, what you were hearing from the businesses. Anything else that you wanted to add for this item? And then we can let Rob, if he has anything specifically from Visit Placer as well.
Oh, there I am. Yeah. Yeah, no, we continue, we're kind of following along and tracking along with everyone else. The question we keep hearing is, with the stay in place order, how do you really actually continue to market toward it, or what kind of policies can you really enact when we're all kind of saying we're open for business, but technically we're sort of not, right? So what we're doing is kind of drawing that line at county lines. And so it's a finesse job of trying to talk to people about saying, hey, we're open, come out here, go ahead and leave your community. And, people are following along on social media and whatnot, and there's just no question that far more people than Placer County are coming out. I think, it's really just a matter of continuing the safety message on that, and making sure that, what we're finding is the places that do seem safe to visitors, that message gets reported back, and there doesn't seem to be issues. There seems to be only problems when there becomes these mass gatherings that find their way onto social media, and and that tends to kind of really work against the reopening. So right now, we're still kind of like everyone else, sort of waiting for that final go button, but anticipating it. I think the important thing to remember is, as you were saying earlier, Daniel, there's this notion of not getting the information fast enough, and I'm just really recommending to people to be utterly in anticipation of things moving way faster than they think. The governor is kind of in this sort of I'll under promise and over deliver kind of mode, and he's been doing it for 3 or 4 weeks. And so if I were a business that was thinking they might be early stage 3, if I were a nail salon, I'd be getting ready right now. You know what I mean? I just think you have to almost read the tea leaves. We got a memo today from Carolyn Batetta, who's the CEO of Visit California. She already started using language like, as we are moving now into early stage 3 with some of these different businesses, and started talking about attractions and stuff. So, I take that to mean that, the thing is happening. And so it's really important that we recognize that it's going to be quicker rather than later.
One thing you just reminded me of, the health officer said there's a lot of confusion whether we're in stage 2, 0.1, whether we are in early stage 3. And she said it's not even really clear to them. And so
Right.
We know that a couple of businesses that were originally in stage 3 have now been allowed, but from her perspective, she's not quite sure we're technically in stage 3. So I think your guidance is right on, which is, we just got to, if you're closed, continue to pay attention to existing guidance so that you can, have that turnaround. So thank you for that.
Yeah, just be ready to go, right? Like I just saw that a Napa winery just sued the governor because they felt like, you know, non-food related tasting rooms should have access. Well, that's been an issue that our wine region has really been very, very interested in, as you know, we feel that those are businesses that can easily safely protocol compared to some of the businesses that are already open. So we feel like that's going to turn very quickly as well. So just it's, you know, be ready to open is what I tell people, because it's going to happen sooner, you know, rather than later.
What was it, the governor's winery?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it was in his region, that's for sure. So, yeah, you know, there's a lot of pressure happening from multiple places. I was on a work call with a woman doing some appraising up here about tourism, and she lives in LA, and we got to the point about COVID and how it's going to have an effect. And I told her, well, we have 185 cases, and she, in the county, and she gasped literally and said, like, we have 300 cases in my neighborhood, right? So there's just this huge difference in the way, you know, the push and pulls going on right now. And, you know, there's two different sorts of pressures happening, I believe, in the state. So I think that's also part of why this has been such a, I would call it sort of a herky-jerky kind of way forward. You know, it's just there's such different scenarios, you know.
Insight, Rob. Any other questions for Rob or related to you know, what we saw over the Memorial Day weekend? So I'll just in this item with Allison and I spoke, Bob and I spoke, and we are going to begin some discussions about planning for the 4th of July. Don't have a lot of details yet, but as I mentioned at the top, really try to push back on our health officer to give us some guidance. You know, we have a little bit a month away. We don't really know where we'll be. And there are some good ideas that our economic director shared with us of ways to handle things like a parade. And so working with the chamber and the Auburn Hook and Ladder, we're going to begin some of those discussions next week and can bring those forward once we have it. But trying to make sure that our community has something to look forward to, even though we don't really know health-wise where we'll be the 4th of July. So more to come. I just wanted to kind of tease out that we are having those discussions and beginning some of those preparations. So with that, we'll go ahead and move to our next item, which is our Auburn Chamber of Commerce report. Allison, I'll turn to you.
Thank you, Mayor Berlant. Outside of helping coordinate with the PPP, all of the business associations in the chamber were able to get together this week and get some design going for a billboard. It's going to be at our billboard location, and it will just say Auburn is open, basically. It's a great, simple design that just conveys the message that we're open and we're open safe, and hopefully encourages people to shop in our town. So that's what we were working on collectively, and it was just really encouraging and exciting for me that all of the business associations in the chamber were able to come together and do this together. That was really exciting for me. So I think that was a huge success. It should be going up late next week or early the week thereafter. It's been submitted to our vendor to get it up and installed. So that's exciting. We had a seminar series this week. It was on alternative financial resources for businesses. And I unfortunately had another commitment at the same time, so I wasn't able to attend, but I heard it was a great seminar. And in 2 weeks, we will be doing one on mental health, just helping people manage their mental health in this time of crisis for some people. Thereafter, I think our seminar hopefully will be on PPP, the forgiveness application and the new guidelines that were distributed, I think about a week and a half ago. And so we should be able to get a seminar on that, and that will be in about a month. And that's about it for the chamber.
Any questions for the Chamber of Commerce?
I was just going to mention that I just thought about this, but there's been such a rush of folks coming to Auburn to recreate in the canyon. And I wonder if there's any way that we can kind of capitalize on that. I love the idea of the billboard saying Auburn is open, please shop. But I know we have a lot of people that are coming up from Roseville or even from Sacramento that are coming up to hike the trails. And so it would be great to kind of capitalize or take advantage of that. I'm not sure, if there's sign placement. Again, I mean, we might be able to waive some things, Bob, but, just take advantage of that. We know that where they're parking, GCWA is right down there. There's a ton of people that are parking there. Obviously along 49, but I'm just saying, I wonder if there's some way that we can get the word out to those folks that are coming directly in. They might be coming up Indian Hill Road and going that way, so they're not coming off Maple. But if there's some sign placement or something that we can do there as well, just to encourage those folks that are coming up to use our trails to maybe go get a bite to eat or go to Old Town and buy something, So something to think about. I don't know, Bob, there's some kind of
I'd like to talk. Yeah, Alice, I agree with that. And I've been kind of pounding that way before COVID. I think we all have. The only problem right now, really promoting that aspect and spending a lot of energy, is I think we don't know where a lot of these people are from, and they could, I think as long as I think we'd have to be a lot more strict if we're going to want to invite people from out of town into our establishments. And, obviously there's going to be some coming in, but I think now promoting it down now during COVID is kind of risky because we don't know where they're coming from. And, I think that's the whole premise of not having large crowds and keeping it down. I was in Tahoe over the holidays, and nothing opened up until after Memorial Day because they wanted to keep the crowds from out of town out of there. And I think even South Lake Tahoe is still, I just read today, very cautious about having crowds come in, and that's their main financial industry there.
Well, I was just thinking, since we're going to put up that billboard.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Rob, did you have any thoughts on how we kind of balance the two, but capitalize at the same time?
I mean, look, here's what I think, and Sandy, I'm completely sympathetic to that idea, especially because having grown up in Tahoe, it's still a thing up there. But here's the reality. The reality is, I drove down 49 and we went out to Cool to pick up some stuff at a store out there. And I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of cars down in the confluence, whether we invited them or not, right? So I don't see, honestly, the harm of maybe if we had signage as you come up out of there, because they're going to be kind of going through town. We can't assume they're from out of town or whatnot. I mean, this is where I get to that gray area of saying, look, we're open for dine-in eating and whatnot. And then I think it's really up to the establishments that we have in town to manage their space. I do think there's definitely some confusion on different areas. I mean, right now people don't know what's open for sit down, takeout. It's everybody's kind of doing it at a different pace, depending on how much they were ready for it. I think the idea of letting people know that are already here that if they want to visit our businesses, they're welcome to do it, and as long as they do it respectfully. Like, I think that language could be really easy to put on there, and then you can capture some of those people that, again, we continue to use an in-county sort of edict for ourselves. Like, we feel like we're not crossing county lines. So we can, of course, there are people from out of county, but there's enough coming up here from Roseville and Granite Bay and Rockland and Lincoln, and down the hill that you could say, hey, just remember, you're here enjoying our resources, come patronize our businesses and do it safely. I think there's nothing wrong with that messaging. It's, it's not as if we're putting it down in Sacramento. That would be where, Sandy, where I think that would be an overstep on our part, right? Where if we went down and said, hey, you got, claustrophobic and, your urban neighborhood, come on out here, right? Like that might be pushing it, but I think since they're here.
Well, yeah, and that's whatever you want to do. I just think there's still a lot of places in town that aren't, employees are still not being careful, and patrons as well, number one. And number two, 90% of the people who I encounter in the canyon, my kids will tell you, I ask all the time, where are you from? Sacramento, down the hill, Bay Area. The ones that are close by know we're open. So we're actually inviting Sacramento people, and nothing against them. I'm just saying, I just think unless we're super safe, and I still have a number of complaints. I had one person say, why, if we tell people no shoes, no service, why not, be a little more strict with some of the other precautions that we're insisting on. So, personally, I think encouraging is not a great thing at this moment, but if unless we were strict, and we're not being strict at all. In fact, I'm still going into restaurants and employees are not masking up. So anyway.
It's the existential question, Sandy, for sure, right?
Yeah.
When you're trying to open up, who do you extend that to? Short of, to your point about, masks and whatnot, I wear mine when I go out, and I do it for other folks. We've left it, from what I understand, and Bob could speak to this, we've not mandated to any business that they have to have that, right? So, and what I've always been telling people is my message to businesses are, there are people out there that are worried about it. And the person who isn't going to worry about it is not going to care if your employees have masks. But the one who does care is going to have an issue with it. So, it's in your own best interest. But short of telling the businesses, as a municipality that you must mandate, I don't know how you manage that, Sandy, otherwise, other than just, safety, safety first messaging,
Rob, I was going to add in here in discussion today, we talked, heard a lot about what the state's doing as far as their discussion on face coverings. And to be clear, face coverings are a recommendation. It is not a requirement. So I think that we need to clarify the difference between the two. But I do agree with you that as you read on Facebook, and Allison gave a very touching story of how customers are reacting. You did last week. Customers are reacting when they don't see those precautions being taken, and how that may become a customer-driven decision. But there is a lot more discussion about whether the state will make it now not just recommended, but highly recommended, or even required in some circumstances. So just wanted to throw that out there. It doesn't really answer the question, but I do think that we just need to clarify that they are recommendations, and that you are not required by state law or county ordinance or city ordinance to wear a face covering. It's just a recommendation when you cannot meet the 6-foot distance recommendation by our county health officials.
Well, Daniel, just to be clear, now maybe I have it wrong. For an establishment to open up and serve food, I thought that the employees were supposed to wear the face coverings. I wasn't talking about patrons.
So interesting enough, I was under the same exact impression that you are, that the forward-facing employees are required. If you go back and look at the guidance, and I did this just yesterday, my wife's family has a number of restaurants, and they've been having this discussion as well. The guidance says it is highly recommended for servers, hostesses, and whatnot. When I read the state guidance, I did not see it as clearly saying it's a requirement. And I don't know if that's changed, and that may be my interpretation, and maybe that's what leads to some of the confusion here. And I'll open up and see if anybody else from the greater group has anything further. But from what my research could tell and from what I have been hearing, I've heard it both ways. So, yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Swaley.
So yeah, at the end of the day, I believe this is a personal choice situation. If I walk into a sandwich shop, restaurant, whatever, and I'm not comfortable with what I'm seeing, I have a choice to get up and walk out. I have a choice to not go back. I think I shared with many of you that my wife and I were at a establishment in Nevada County, and we were uncomfortable, and we made the decision that we're done. We're not going back there because they didn't have any face masks on, didn't have gloves on, and they got way too up in our space that we were comfortable with. So if we have restaurants in town that are doing that, I've not seen restaurants in Auburn doing that. I've seen very cautious employees, all with their protective gear on. I've not been to every restaurant in town, but I've felt very comfortable with what I've seen in our town. And I guess the message to our patrons who come into our city is, if you're not comfortable, then leave. And the idea of advertising and trying to capture the folks who are trying to get out into the open air and enjoying our trails and our canyons and all that stuff that we have adjacent to the city, why wouldn't we try to get them into our town to patronize our businesses who desperately need it? So it's all a matter of personal preference, in my opinion. I don't need the government telling me when and when I shouldn't wear a mask. I wear a mask when I feel comfortable wearing a mask. If I'm walking into a business that wants me to wear a mask, I put a mask on, so I can go in and do whatever business I want to do there. But from my perspective, if we have an opportunity to drive some business to our struggling businesses, we should take every opportunity to do that.
Thank you, Matt. If I can clarify too, one thing that I just said, I just pulled up the guidance document from the state, and it is pretty clear. Wasn't clear for me to find it last night, but it specifically says face coverings are strongly encouraged for all employees. However, they are required for any employee, e.g. server, manager, busser, food runner, etc., who must be within 6 feet of customers. All restaurant workers should minimize the amount of time spent within that 6 feet of guests. So that's straight from the guidance documents. And, I guess I don't want to belabor the point, because it's kind of like everything in the last 2 months. Things do change. It is confusing. It is, the state, and I think the county and I think the city, we've been on education-based, versus enforcement. And so, we can continue to have this conversation, but I just wanted to at least clarify from what I just said. So anybody have anything else? Yeah, go ahead, Marjorie.
The only other thing on the Open and Auburn pages, I limited membership to people in Auburn within so many miles of Auburn. We could change that to allow it out to probably 30 miles to Roseville. But we could also, for a very small amount of money, which I don't mind paying for, I've done it for the Auburn, we can target ads to people who live in, let's say, Roseville. It's Placer County. They're coming up here anyway. And then they go to the page, they will see our businesses, our restaurants, our businesses that are open. And as long as you keep that content within the branding that we're trying to do about us being outdoorsy, family oriented, great food, great shops, you may bring them up into town, even though maybe they were going to come up here to hike. I mean, there is social media things you can do either free or for very low cost to continually educate people about what we have up here in Auburn.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for that, Marjorie. Appreciate that point.
Hey,
It's on the
Dana,
chamber
really,
report. Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
just real quick, and on the personal choice issue with masks, clearly though, if a business chooses to make masks mandatory, they have every right to do that, correct? Like, we're not gonna police them the other way, I assume, right?
My understanding has been that face coverings can be required by the business for their patrons and their employees.
That's what I thought. Thanks.
Okay, we'll move on then to our business association reports. Marjorie, why don't we just start with you and the Airport Business Park Association?
Yeah, there's no new updates. We're not meeting right now. Just from what I can see, with who shares the building here, there's no more employees than they had before, which is still limited and restricted. Same with us. We're starting to call people back, and I believe the other businesses are as well, but we haven't had any meetings to give you an update on that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Monique, for the 49 Business Association.
Thank you. We don't have any new updates at this time either. We actually do have a board meeting scheduled for Tuesday, so possibly next week we'll have some more updates there.
Great, thank you very much. That wraps up our agendized items. Anybody have anything for roundtable, good of the order before we move into closed session here? Okay, well, if not, if anybody here has any ideas for topics or issues they want to discuss next week, we can do that. Please just let me know. Otherwise, for the city council, I will entertain a motion to move to closed session.
I'll move that we move to closed session.
I'll second that.
For the council, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Actually, I'm sorry,
Aye.
our attorney's
Aye.
not here. I've been asked to do roll call votes on everything. So
Right.
Amy, if
It's a good try.
please take the roll.
Thank you. Councilmember Dowden Calvillo,
Aye.
Amara,
Yes.
Mackey,
Aye.
Coakley,
Yes.
and Mayor Berlant.
Aye. Thank you again very much, everybody. We will talk with you very soon. Have a good day.
Thanks a lot,
Thanks,
everyone. Great
everyone.
weekend.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
I'd like to, are we going to start right away? Because I'd like to go on my computer. I'm on.
Yeah,
my
you
phone.
should have separate closed
Yeah,
session
separate.
information from Gary.
Yeah, we have
Okay,
to,
so we leaving this and.
You're
opening
leaving.
new-
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
bye. Thank you very much, Amy.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Amy.
Have a good meeting. Bye.